Hello and welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to talk about something a little more controversial. Anything to do with school.
I thought was interesting. There's a Daily Wire article that talked about a school board that parents were questioning a book that was in the library. And they went to the school board, and the school board basically silenced them and did not want to hear any of their comments or questions. So at that point, does the community have any control over what happens in the school if the school doesn't want to listen to them?
Mm-mm. I thought that was the school board's job, was to listen to the parents. Did they forget what their job was?
Yeah, because schools, at least at one point in time, were designed to be kind of ruled or administered by the community. You had a say to what happened in your local school. You could go in and vote on things. You could kind of shape how they educate the children and kind of guide the school based on the community's wishes. And it appears now the community doesn't have any say in how their schools operate.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if that's not coming from kind of top-down government, because it used to be that we were state and local.
Yeah, it used to be local, everything local run.
And now everything is basically federal run, which I don't think is very helpful, because the people in New York and the people in Georgia have totally different needs.
And views on
and views and parents, amongst other things.
And it's definitely not clear which one is right.
Yeah.
Parents have their own opinions on how things should be taught, and then it isn't obvious that based on what people get taught doesn't always determine what they need that education for. I mean, you have people that want to go and be a lawyer, they need to learn different things than someone that wants to become a doctor. And certain communities don't always generate people that go into those fields. For example, a small town in Louisiana might want a lot of people to learn how to do fishing or farming, opposed to like upstate New York, where they might want people to be more involved in other fields.
Yeah, and I really think it depends on the district, because we're not saying all school boards are bad, but there seems to be a going trend of school boards not listening to the parents, which is literally their job. Going back to the history of the way schools are.
Well, I mean, this current school system was set up by the Prussians in, I guess you would almost say, East Germany, or I guess now that location is kind of part of the Russia and Poland now. But those areas, they developed a school system to teach the kids to be highly disciplined and listen to authority. So that way they became really good and disciplined soldiers. And that system, I'd say, worked fairly well when it came to the Industrial Revolution, to train people to become obedient workers in a standard job of manufacturing, and you need to come in at X time and leave at X time and produce X amount of work, and you need to sit there and stare at what you're doing and do nothing else and think of nothing else and just get the job done. And that's kind of how public schools are set up, is to put people into a way of being productive in that environment.
See, when Paul and I were first discussing how we were going to teach our children, I didn't really know all of this, because honestly, I don't teach you this in school. And if you haven't guessed by my attitude that Paul was homeschooled and I was public schooled. And I mean, we both got an education, obviously, but when we were in college, I was very good at memorization. I was very good at taking the tests, but I wasn't really learning anything, because I was never taught how to learn. I was taught how to memorize and spit it out. Where Paul actually soaked in a lot of the information that he had gotten taught and kind of already knew a lot of it. And I think that was a big wake-up call for me, that maybe the way that we're taught in school isn't the most efficient way by any means, and maybe wasn't very good actually. It was almost harmful to the way I was thinking because I no longer wanted to read. I no longer wanted to learn about anything because I was so overwhelmed by all the stuff that we were taught in school that I didn't want to learn anymore. I ended up quitting college because I was so sick of being in a school. And I think public school really burns kids out. They don't need to be there that long, in my opinion. So we actually decided to homeschool our kids. Now, granted, they're still very young, but with our oldest, he's in what you would consider kindergarten, I guess. And I teach for maybe an hour a day, if that. And what I have seen, and it wasn't something I expected because I had been public schooled, and I was used to the 8 hours a day or half days for younger kids. I was not expecting the growth to be the same or almost better than what you get in homeschool or at public school. So I'm working on numbers, and I only went over them maybe two days, like from 100 to 200 plus, thinking that it would take me like a couple weeks for him to learn because that's what it felt like in school. When in reality, I let him think on it for a few days, and the next day he pretty much knew the whole thing. And that really astonished me and really kind of fixed my thoughts on why we are homeschooling. And it's not saying public school is necessarily bad or good or the right choice for your kid, but there's something wrong with the way that we're teaching kids because it doesn't really follow the proper way that our brain works.
Well, and I noticed one thing that surprised me when I went into college is we'll be taking our classes, and then the teachers would tell us like tricks on how to get through tests. Like if it's a multiple choice, she said that there's studies out there that saying X amount of time, if you're completely stumped on what the answer is, it is more than likely the one in the middle, or I forgot the exact statistics on this, but the point is they had all these tricks and methods on how to get through the tests. And that's because that is the goal, is to get students to pass these tests. That way you have a high score to show to the government or whoever is keeping track of these, the board or whoever's actually looking at it. And that was the focus. The focus was just to get high test scores. That was it. Not, do the kids actually acquire the information? Is the information acquired in a way where they can apply it in the real world? I mean, you can learn something and throw it down on a piece of paper and answer questions, but can you actually go outside and take it and use it where it's applicable? Can you take your math problems that you did in algebra and go outside and do the algebra cases in carpentry, trying to solve for how long do I need this in here? Where can I cut in order to solve for X on that? Or is it just something you've learned to write on a piece of paper? And I've noticed there are a couple schools out there that I've seen that actually try to apply that, but the majority of them just focus on getting that test answer done. And to me, that isn't apparent that that is useful or a way of properly learning the material.
Yeah, often like a few of the schools that I see that try to fix it are really only for either very, very young kids, like preschool to like say second grade, and then occasionally some like older high school classes. I feel like all the kids in the middle, they're like, we don't know what to do with this, just stick them in a school. It almost feels like babysitting more than it feels like school because kids get pushed with so much busy work. And I remember this, I hated homework. Why are we at school for 8 hours a day and coming home and doing more homework and spending that time instead of spending that time with our family? Kids hardly spend any time with their parents nowadays. What do they say? 34 minutes on average with a parent per day. I can't even imagine that. And I understand that parents, especially single parents, you're going to be very busy. And obviously, homeschooling your kids is not feasible.
No.
So this is why we bring it back to that school board thing where parents should have the ability to have a say in our education, in our kids' education, because our kids are our next generation. What they learn now is how the future is going to look. And how do we want that future to look for our kids and our grandkids? And I think this is why we're so passionate about it, because before we had kids, it was like, yeah, the school system kind of sucks. But now that we have kids and we have a stake in it, we've realized how screwed up the school system really is and just how much indoctrination and propaganda is going on in it. Pa ended up having to reteach me a lot of different science things that were taught as facts that aren't, that were just theories, just like any other theory that they weren't teaching. And it almost made me quite upset because as a child, you're supposed to look up to your teacher like they're the smartest being on the planet. And not saying teachers aren't smart, but I'm saying teachers aren't allowed to teach. Teachers aren't allowed to teach the things that they know are right. They're told to teach what's in this book. And what's in that book isn't facts. And I want our kids to learn how to think for themselves, not to memorize facts, because we have AI to remember our facts for us. We have the internet to memorize dates for us. We want our kids to be able to think creatively, think how to come up with solutions and how to sift through all this information. And yeah, obviously homeschooling isn't for everyone. Private school isn't for everyone, but I really want to make a push, especially towards parents, to start really thinking about what your kids are learning, because it is important.
Yeah. And well, that's what you were talking about, brought up a thought of mine that I've been thinking about for some time. You were saying that you were taught things that the school system provides as facts, and everything is black and white. And
Very.
when you dive into the science, you realize there's a lot of gray there. And there are certain things that are like, oh, this is 100% truth, this is the fact, and you go find the high-end science, get in the college level, and they're like, well, actually, this is a theory. We're not really sure about this. And then they tell you these other things that could potentially be true because they're also valid theories. And I think majority of people, like in our generation, grew up on that, and then we get exposed to the internet, and we get exposed to those scientists on YouTube that are, high-end, doctoral level.
You mean not Bill Nye the Science Guy?
Yeah, cutting edge of the research, and then they tell you, oh yeah, that stuff you learned in school that they taught was a hard fact. No. And well, also sometimes the science just changes too.
That's very true.
Because a lot of our information, I don't know how old our textbooks are now, but they're usually 10 plus years old.
And the school system can't afford new books every year, even if they do come up with new information.
Yeah, so they're not getting corrected up to date reliably either. And then they go through a board in order to figure out, what do we want to put in there? And then they're taught as a fact, which sometimes it's not, sometimes it's a theory where there's all their alternatives to it. And the generation that grew up on that felt like they were lied to by the school. And then all of a sudden they get to the point where they start believing in things that are completely absurd, like conspiracy theories and other such stuff, because they don't have a basis of what fact is, what fiction is, and then they weren't taught in the school system how to determine that, or how to sift through the information, or critical thinking.
Yeah, there's such a mistrust with the school system, with teachers, with the government, with pretty much everything nowadays, and it shouldn't be like that. There shouldn't be this giant mistrust in every single institution, because not everyone is out to get you, not everyone is out to lie to you, but the way it's set up is how it is starting to look. A bunch of pile of misinformation. And we're probably not supposed to say misinformation, but I really think that our generation and the new generation coming up is very, very skeptical because they have the entire internet and they can look up what everyone is saying to them and decide now if they think that's true information or not. And what they find on the internet may or may not be truth, may or may not be right. It could be complete conspiracy theories. And, you know, I love a good conspiracy theory, but we also have to be able to sift through that and decide if it is even worth the thoughts of it. Because there are so many crazy ones going on right now that are just totally stupid.
Well, and then there's the concept of a theory. That isn't hardly taught in the school system. You're taught hardline facts. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that will hear it and then they're like, oh, that's exactly it. Like, can't you have a standing that's, well, maybe, possibly? Well, I like to hear that, but it could be.
Well, in science,
that's possible. You can have a gray opinion, possibly.
Well, in science, you're taught the scientific method, which is basically how to test a theory.
Observation, yeah.
You know, the all the steps that you were taught, which I hardly remember anymore, but why is that not taught in every class? Why is that only taught in science? Well, science isn't the only subject that evolves.
I can use
almost every subject evolves, except for I think math probably doesn't evolve quite as much. Maybe some of the upper level stuff, some of the crazy math stuff, but your basic math, I think, is about the only thing that doesn't really evolve. The way the way we help people read evolves. The way we help people understand evolves.
Well, the method,
history evolves.
Methods how to teach people change. I mean, now we have such a classroom of people that have short attention spans and have other issues at play. You can't sit them down and teach them in the exact same format we used to teach people in the 1950s. I mean,
no, definitely
that
not.
has changed through time, and I hear reports of babies that went through the pandemic are very different, and it's causing challenges for school teachers now. I guess I'm not exactly sure what challenges, but I've definitely heard people complain about their different and their challenges.
Yeah, they're just very they can't focus. They're very disruptive, and the schools aren't really allowed to do anything in terms of discipline. It ends up falling on the teachers. The teachers have way too much going on to deal with kids that really shouldn't be in a classroom full of 30 people. And neither do I think classrooms should have 30 people to begin with.
No, because then you lose that one-on-one connection, and the teachers spend their entire time with the 1 to 2 kids, or maybe 3, that need more attention. Then you leave everyone else in the dust.
Yeah.
And they just sit in the class all day doing nothing. I mean, that's kind of why you can read stories of some of our, I think Albert Einstein's one of them, that were just did horrible in school. And they're like, oh, why? Well, because he was utterly bored, got no one-on-one attention, and was sitting in places where he didn't need to be because he was way advanced.
Well, this is
why he did horrible? Because it wasn't fun. It wasn't a challenge. It wasn't something that motivated you to push on and succeed.
Yeah, I sort of went through this, and I was so thankful to my mom. She could have held me back for that next year because my age was kind of at that in-between zone. Actually, I think I was past it, but she pushed me to go into the grade above, and I am so thankful for that, because I would have been so bored. So bored. Because honestly, school is boring to begin with, and then if you're not challenged when you're a brain type that needs to be challenged, it's not very fun. Like, as soon as I hit high school, I ended up doing online school for a while because I just hated being in a building for 8 hours a day. I did that for 2 years, and then I went to, I don't know if you guys know what PSEO is, but it's post-secondary education option.
It's where state we grew up in had an option where it takes was it junior in high school or junior and senior?
Yep.
Yeah, junior and senior, and give them the ability to go to college for 2 years, and the state government would pay for it.
Yeah, I think it was a little young socially to go there, but the education that I got taught in college was so superior to what I was learning in high school that I was I was so much happier. I could leave and go to each class. I could take the classes I want to. Obviously, I had to fall within the guidelines, but I could take other classes on top of it. And I was so much happier there. And then there also wasn't that high school drama on top of it because that bothered me.
Yeah.
Not that I was like necessarily horribly bullied or anything. I honestly don't like people. Ironic, I know. But I don't like being in a school full of like 1,000 people. It doesn't really help your education. It makes you very distracted. And you have all these other things going on. You're switching classes and all these things, and you're not focusing on your education. You hear what the teacher says for maybe 10 minutes in a classroom when you really need that one-on-one attention or that main focus like you have in a college class.
Well, it's, I guess, something that you kind of learned about the school system when you were trained to be a teacher is they have to follow basically a prescribed teaching method.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a couple friends that are in their 90s now, and they were kindergarten teachers. And she told me she had, I think it was 5 different methods to teach children how to read. And it is because she developed the understanding that not all these kids learn the same way. She developed 5 different methods to teach 5 different types of kids. Well, currently in the school system, you're not allowed to deviate from the prescribed method.
There's no time.
Well, there probably now is no time.
I mean, there's some people with like some of those like
are they even allowed to?
learning people with the learning improvement plans or whatever they're called will have like a extra person come in and help them learn in their preferred learning way. But those are for the only like 5 kids that really are falling behind.
Mm-hmm.
Not for everyone in the classroom. In the classroom, you basically have whatever teaching style that works the best for that
That's where
teacher.
A private school comes in handy.
Well, just
because you can
classrooms with less people in it.
Well, yeah, but in the private school, the teacher's not held to as strict of standard by the government regulations.
That is true.
I mean, they can develop teaching methods for the individual in front of them that might be struggling or might be succeeding and help them get through and learning things.
Well, also touching on the very sensitive topic of gender, boys and girls also learn very differently.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I even see it in our very youngest who barely knows how to talk. The way that her brain developed versus the way what the boys' interests are completely different. My boys could have cared less about books. They just thought they were fun things to rip up at her age. She sits down and looks through them as if they're some like magical, thing that they are. And my boys need to be up exercising. The way they learn best, honestly, is to make sure that they have enough run time before it. I used to try to do school with them in the morning. That was a fail. I could barely get him to want to learn. But now we're doing it after lunch. So after the whole morning of play.
Yeah, you have to burn off that energy before you can sit them down.
He'll sit down and get the same amount of work done in a half an hour that used to take him an hour and a half. And I've had to learn this because every kid is different. But the benefit of homeschooling or less kids in your school is you can kind of find that sweet spot for kids because they need to be well fed. They need to not be tired, which I don't know why school starts as early as it does.
Yeah.
Kids need like an hour with their parents in the morning to get their brain set.
Assuming their parents' work allows that.
Obviously, but I'm saying they kind of need that hour wake up time before you thrust them into school with 1,000 people. It's too much, honestly. Like, especially people that are more on the introverted side. Well, kind of both of us. Yeah. Thrusting them into a school full of a ton of people really kind of shuts them down. It makes school very overwhelming, and it's not a good place to learn.
Here's something more of a future-based question. AI just came out last fall. We essentially have no clue what it's going to be like, how it's going to develop. And what tools are needed to use it effectively, or even what it will look like by the time in a year from now. Because I mean, it's changed drastically from this fall, even.
The image generation
Oh,
they're still missing some fingers,
improved greatly.
But like the textures behind it, like the textures of grass,
no longer looks like you cut out a little square patch from your yard and pasted it everywhere.
Well, that, like, before the grass didn't even have like pieces. It was just like,
oh, it was a kind of
green blob
with little stripes in it to give you like a grass look.
Yeah, and now it's like you could almost touch the grass. I mean, obviously there's still some patterning happening because it's still AI. It's not a picture. It's not, growing grass outside, but the way it has improved in less than a year is crazy. And the most growth I've seen is with Grok.
Yeah.
Like exponentially, because Grok does both images and you can do anything with it.
Pretty much. But,
yeah.
But anyway, what I was getting at with that is it seems like it's not apparent yet, but I don't know if our school systems, this new method is probably going to be such a disruption that our current school systems probably aren't even capable right now of teaching the next generation to work with this. Mm-hmm. I mean, first of all, it's really new. So we have no clue what's going to happen.
Or how to teach it.
Yeah, but it takes like years to update a school textbook. Like, is our school system even going to be capable of updating for this AI technology?
Well, I think the kids are going to learn how to use it before the teachers are even showing how to use it.
That's probably true. I mean, look, at college level classes now, as soon as AI came out, kids started using it to write their papers.
Oh, why wouldn't you?
And then the teachers are basically like, this one looked like it was AI written, but I can't prove it. Pass.
If you use AI to write your paper, please go through it.
Well, double check it, because
it makes sense.
I've heard a couple teachers say that the AI prompt question was still in the document when they sent it to them. That one got a lower grade because it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, you really gotta. Well, and then also when you do the prompts for AI, little AI lesson here, you really have to fill it with the information you want and the information you learn, because otherwise AI is just going to pull crap off the internet that doesn't even make sense for your class. Make sure you prompt it with what you have learned.
And I would say double check it every now and then. Because, I mean, it's not apparent what it's pulling isn't always the facts that, like, the school textbooks have that are a little outdated and old. Sometimes you can...
Yeah.
Find them and you're like, oh yeah, we've known that for thousands of years. Well, not thousands.
Well, I ask it to pull
a cool fun fact of Pennsylvania state. Okay, those are pretty obvious. Well, those are probably going to be right.
Real world example is I asked it to pull facts for a video I was doing about moons, or about the moon, and it gave me a couple facts from Mars, like the volcano from Mars.
That's right.
It put it in the moon. Now, granted, this was quite a while ago, so AI has probably updated since then. It's gotten
better since then, yeah.
But it's silly examples. Please double check what AI says, because just like people, just like everything in this world, not everything it says is facts.
Oh, what's interesting is while using it, it's teaching you how to ask the right questions.
Actually, that's why I like Grok so much, because Grok's like, oh, you meant this. Try asking me it this way. I may understand it better.
Because I wanted a hyper complex image that it wasn't able to give me. You basically made the image yourself off of a bunch of stuff, because AI wasn't capable of it. But we were trying it. We're asking it hyper detailed questions on exactly what I wanted, and it just couldn't do it. And I think it was because... well, first of all, it might not be capable of that level of image that I wanted. But also, like, I was looking at learning how super precise you need to ask the question.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, I didn't know how to ask the question that precisely.
Yeah, you really have to describe exactly what you want, because otherwise you're going to get some weird image. And even when you ask it exactly what you want, sometimes AI does what it thinks it wants to do.
That's true. Yeah.
Because it does have a bias. Like, I ask it not to generate, say, people in the image, and half the time it still generates creepy looking people.
Well, and we're still talking about AI. That's something they learned about. Was it DeepSeek, the Chinese AI system? It has a couple companies have tried to wipe it out, so it's like deep inside its programming. A bias for anything, like if you ask it a question about the Chinese government, it'll always paint the Chinese government in a good light, or it won't at all answer your question. Like if you ask about, a certain incident happened at a square, it won't even mention that even happened. Basically the guy that stood in front of the tanks in that famous photo, you'll never see that on Grok. It won't mention, or not Grok, DeepSeek. It'll never show up. It won't exist because that event never happened. And there's an inherent bias against anything that could paint the Chinese government in a bad light. And a couple of companies have took DeepSeek because it's out there open in the market for anyone to use, and they tried to wipe away that ability. Nope, still has it. They haven't figured it out quite yet. So you have to be careful with the AI in that sense too, because it does have an inherent logic system built by the designers, and obviously the Chinese government has a certain way of thinking and a certain way they want their people to think. So they built the AI to promote that way of thinking.
But pulling it back to schooling, I think the biggest thing for me of why I'm against traditional school, at least the way it's traditionally taught now, is because I'm seeing it right now in real time, the way that I teach my kid, which is one-on-one and not 8 hours a day. It's at most an hour a day. And I'm seeing him right on track or above.
Above in some spots.
Like in math, he's probably above. With reading, I think he's right on track. That same growth is what you get in public school, where kids are there for 8 hours a day. I was miserable in school. I was miserable staying there for 8 hours a day. Why are we putting our kids through this if we remember back how miserable we were? Now, I'm sure some of you had great experiences, but I kind of had more of a brain that needed constant, not entertainment, but I didn't like being bored. I didn't want to be bored. I got in trouble for talking. Imagine that.
Not surprising at all.
Yeah.
Every job you've had.
Yeah. Well, I did warn them. that I like to talk. So, I mean, that's kind of why we started this, is because I'm just a very naturally chatty person. He is once you get to know him.
Oh, yeah, I have a big shell. I'm the quietest person in the room, and then you break that shell and talk about a topic I like, and I'll go on forever.
I just get nervous and start talking. That's my nervous habit, is chatting, so that's really unhelpful.
I get nervous and stay quiet.
Yeah, it's quite the dynamic. No one believes me that he's actually the more chatty one at home. They're like, what? But yeah, so we really just want to see positive change for kids in school, because so many people have to rely on public school because they don't have another option.
Yeah.
And I really wish that, so I have the luxury of being a stay-at-home mom and being able to homeschool my kids. And I have let my friends know if they ever want help homeschooling that I would help, at least with 1 or 2 families. And I really think we should try to come together as a community to either get these school systems to actually listen to us as parents, or start taking our kids out and finding alternative methods.
Well, good source actually is YouTube.
Yeah.
You can find a ton of educational stuff for people to learn. You can find high-end conversations on astrophysics and a whole bunch of stuff, professors at university lectures, and you can go all the way down to your basic level, little kid stuff. Well, it has most all of it. I mean, maybe you won't get the exact certain stuff that are in the textbooks that you want. But I mean, you can get the textbooks.
Plugging in my other channel. This is where I actually started my kids' YouTube channel, Mom and Pa Story Time.
Yeah.
Is because I wanted both moral stories and educational stories that weren't so boring. I'm sure some of my first ones were kind of boring, but
Well, you're learning.
yeah.
That's what happens when you learn. You fail multiple times, succeed, and get better.
Yeah, but I'm able to put in the information that I believe is true and information that I want my kids to learn. It's information that I would actually let my kids watch. And so far, my kids have had pretty positive reviews. So, go check it out. I'll put the link in the description. But the reason I started it was because I saw a lack of entertainment education and entertainment education that actually gave real facts. Because there's lots of entertaining education stuff. Not all of it has the true facts. It has a lot of the sticking points that you learn in public school. Evolution theory, like its facts, yet doesn't give any alternative when there's
What are the alternative theories of it?
right. And there's more than one alternative theory. There isn't just the Christian view and the atheist view. There's more than that.
There's also multiple atheist views.
There's multiple atheist views. There's multiple Christian views.
They're all technically still theory. It's just which side do you view more heavily on?
And this is why the local school board is so important, because depending on the way the parents feel in that area, should be where a little bit more of the bias lies.
And they can either change which one they want to talk or get rid of it and allow parents to go through the process of teaching. Well, parents should be involved in teaching their kids, frankly.
Yeah, some just don't have as much time, which is probably why public school was...
A single mom would struggle quite a bit to teach a kid.
Well, any single parent.
Single parent, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Don't leave the dads out.
They are out there, just not
as common.
Not statistically as many of them.
Yeah. I always feel bad, though, because they always get the real crap end of the stick.
I'm sure will be fiery things we're talking about homeschools and things people don't necessarily all agree on.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, you can have your own opinion. That's kind of the point of what we're talking about today is to get our opinions in the public school system and make it so they actually listen to people's opinions.
Yep.
Even if the community has a diverse opinions.
Yeah.
School should represent that.
If you couldn't tell, we're quite passionate about education, not necessarily one way or another, but just getting our kids a proper education is really our goal.
Yep. Educated kids, critical thinking, which is lacking.
Yeah. But we'll see you again on Talk with Ma and Pa, and we'll talk about more stuff we think about.
Yep.
Hopefully we're more regular now that every single virus in the entire planet has hit our house for the last, 3 months?
Also need to get better, more comfortable in the camera. I feel like a board over here.
You kind of always look like a board.
Thanks, honey.
What do you mean? You're like
a 2x4, 2x4.
Yeah, see, when you turn him this way, he disappears. Where'd he go?
Thanks, honey.